What's up YouTube, Capital G here, another episode of Hope for Rogue Players, and ladies and gentlemen, Cubic enthusiasts alike, I would just like to say, the Cubic revolution has begun. We out here at these regionals, we doing big things. I told you guys Fusion Master Race, and after that Cubic shit, I am not surprised. Your boy over here, Industrial Illusions, actually got 20th place at a regional that was, I believe he said over 160 players, which means that would be 8 rounds of Swiss, so to get 20th, he had to go at least 6-2, and this is important, guys. This was post Raging Tempest, which means he definitely had to play against some Zodiacs, some like 60 card Infernoids. He had to play against some decks that were obviously much more relevant than little old Cubics, and somehow, some way, whether it be luck, whether it be by book or crook, this guy found the way to get them W's, and I could not be happier because I've been looking into picking up Cubic stuff, and I'm just like, man, you guys gotta believe me. I'm not trolling. Cubics are the future of Yu-Gi-Oh. Okay, maybe that's maybe that's hyperbole, but regardless, he did some very big things. Now again, I think you guys should definitely check out the video. He spent over 13 minutes actually explaining in detail why he ran some of the cards and some of his decisions, but I want to go ahead and show you guys the deck. So the first thing that I noticed about this build is, holy hell, this is a very, very aggressive build of Cubics. This is clearly a build that wants to end the duel within the first couple of turns, very similar to Mermill, and I think that that fits the natural strategy and playstyle of Cubics perfectly, because if you really look at the archetype and you look at the cards closely, it's pretty clear that Konami designed them to kind of like OTK and to just generally be able to do a bunch of battle damage incredibly fast. In fact, like, look how many ways that they have of doing burn damage, and look how many cards that they have that like can cut your opponent's life points in half. They have Karma, they have the Fusion that does that as well. So Konami has designed this deck to be able to do a ton of battle damage early, and I think that that works really well this format, because if you look at the big players, like the big meta decks, you look at like Zodiacs and you look at Metaphors and Infernoids, not a lot of decks running battle traps right now. I know that Noah Green did run some Mirror Forces in his build of Zodiacs that got second place at Seattle, but generally Mirror Force is not known as like a common card, and that basically just benefits them. The fact that he ran 3 copies of Dark World Dealings, a card that's inherently a neg1 and gives your opponent a draw, that means that he was trying to turbo through his deck. He's trying to get to Crimson Nova, and he's basically just trying to kill you. He's also running not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of Twin Twisters. So like, if you really put it into perspective, right, you think about a traditional opening for Zodiac Beast. I mean, outside of the back row, what do you really have to worry about if you have like a Nova plus maybe a Cubic Aura? You basically can OTK them off those 2 cards. Like if they have a Trident and they have maybe a Daigusto Emerald plus some back row, that's a pretty standard opening for Zodiacs. Even if they have things like Maxi, you just ignore them and then you can just proceed to kill them, because you guys should know this deck can put out so much massive damage through Crimson Nova, which is almost a 1-card OTK. If you don't know what this card is, basically it's kind of like a weird cross between Blackluster Soldier, Envoy to the Beginning, and High Priestess of Prophecy. You summon it like you would the High Priestess, but then it has the double attacking effect of like BLS. And what's really good is right now there are a lot of little annoying monsters that can kind of disrupt your plays, things like Alkahest and Fairy Tale Snow, the new Invoked Radine, which is a Book of Moon that your opponent can use to just disrupt your plays, and then obviously Trident, which everybody kind of has to deal with at this point. That's why you're seeing people run My Body as a Shield. Well, guess what? Crimson Nova can basically ignore all of them. So if your opponent has like a Daigusto Emerald on field, if you summon the Cubic Demon, if you summon the Cubic Deity and then you activate Cubic Aura, which is a card that actually will double this card's attack and then cut the Daigusto Emerald in half, this guy will be at 6,000 attack. The Daigusto Emerald will be at 900. You off that 1 attack, you'll actually do what, 5,100 damage, and you won't even have to use the second attack. This guy does 3,000 damage during the end phase, so you'll basically just burn to death. It's literally 1 attack and they just die. So you get to ignore the Trident, you get to ignore anything else. It's really cool that this deck is completely immune to Dimensional Barrier. I know you guys see all the Exceeds and like, well, this, but it's not really. Like, Cubics are not an Exceed deck, and even though they run fusions, you generally are not even going to fusion off Cubic of the, off Unification on the Cubics. He actually said that he fusioned 1 time during the entire event. And the last thing that I want to talk about, it's actually not super big, but it does make Cubics more consistent, is the small little buff that they got from Foolish Burial Goods coming out of Raging Tempest. If you guys know what this card does, but you don't really understand Cubics, just know this: all the Cubic spells and traps, every single one of them can be banished from the graveyard, and they all have secondary effects like Cubic Karma. When this card is banished from your graveyard, you basically get the Rhoda for any monster in the archetype. Cubic Aura is kind of like a Fiendish Chain. If you banish it from the graveyard, you can target monsters on your opponent's side of the field. You can negate their effects, and that's really, really important for getting rid of something like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is kind of a bitch for this deck to deal with. And in addition to that, none of these Cubic cards, the monsters or the spells and traps, none of them, none of the entire archetype is actually a hard once per turn. So you can activate things like, you can activate 3 Cubic Karmas in one turn, and that's the reason why things like Reasoning are actually in the deck. You might look at Reasoning and be like, well, shouldn't I just call 4? I mean, either you're going to have the 4 go to the graveyard, or you're going to get stuck with like a shitty max C. Like, yeah, that's true. You really aren't looking for Reasoning to resolve unless your opponent like has no idea what the fuck Cubics even are. But the important thing about Reasoning is you might end up getting like, you know, a couple of karmas in the graveyard, or you might get like 2 unifications in the grave, or you might get like an aura plus 2 karmas, and then you can just activate all of those at once, and it's like you're still going to actually end up recovering all the advantage that you lost from that neg 1 that you got when playing Reasoning. So I mean, again, is this deck like super meta? Absolutely not. But yeah, I've always thought that Cubics are a super fun budget decks, and I think as honestly the game slows down, Cubics are going to just get better. The only way that Cubics will just be completely garbage is if people start committing the battle traps, because battle traps do absolutely destroy this deck. But if we're still going to be living in this world where people aren't really committing to, you know, those actual traps that are used in the battle phase, if it's all people just using like D barrier and stuff like that, I don't know, man. Cubics are looking kind of spicy. And if nothing else, I had to highlight this deck because it, like, after weeks of talking about it, it finally did something worth noting. So I had to definitely make a video about it. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. As always, leave your comments in the comment section below. Please, guys, check out the original video of Industrial Illusions, because I mean, it ain't easy doing anything with Cubics, especially when you're in this fucking Zodiac format. And if this guy played 8 rounds, you'd have to think that he probably played at least maybe 4 Zodiacs. Like half of those rounds were probably against Zodiacs, and if he went 2-2, I'm still gonna say that that was pretty good. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already.